Hello, everyone, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to this fall update meeting of the NGO Committee on Aging of New York. I'm Cynthia Stewart, I'm chair, and I'm delighted to see so many of you on this call. And thank you all for being members, renewing your members, and a special welcome to all our new members. I also want to thank the International Federation on Aging for hosting our meeting today, and special thanks to Bruna Swartz, who's managing all of us on this Zoom call today. Thank you to IFA and to Bruna for doing this. So today's meeting has two parts, okay? The first part, I shall review our overall NGO Committee on Aging goals, which were established for the two-year cycle, 2021 to 2023. So we're sort of mid-year. And then I shall call on our 7 subcommittee chairs or co-chairs to give a very brief overview of their subcommittee's work that they've done and what's ahead. And listen carefully, because in case you're not already affiliated with one of our subcommittees within the NGO Committee on Aging, we're always needing additional help, support, great ideas. So I hope you will consider joining at least one, if not more, of the subcommittees to continue and further our work. The second part of our meeting, we will hear from our incredible DESA leader of the Program on Aging Unit, Amal Abu Rafe, who's the director, on new developments and new opportunities in aging at the UN. And then we'll move into a Q&A dialogue, which Erica will ably moderate, and then closing remarks from Francis. So that's our program today, but there will be that opportunity for dialogue, to ask questions and make comments, but you can also use the chat function, which we'll monitor, to raise any questions, concerns, or post any thoughts or ideas, okay? So I'd like to get underway by introducing, you elect officers every 2 years, and so our officers and members at large for this year are our Vice Chair, Francis Dynadon, representing Soroptimist International, our corresponding secretary, Maud Bruce About. If you got your wave, if you have your, I hope, have your video on for this part. The recording secretary is Martha Bile from the International Association of Gerontology and Geriatrics. Katie Weiss from Global Aging, formerly International Association on Homes and Services for the Aging. And then we have 5 members at large. They are Ramsey Alwyn, National Council on Aging, Robin Fenley, International Association of Gerontology Geriatrics, Chris Hanway from United Settlements, Homes and Settlements, Magda Kaczmarska from Generations United, and William Bill Smith from the Global Aging, formerly IASA. So those are your elected members at large and officers for the executive committee, and others will be introduced as we get to the subcommittees, because some of them are not members of the executive committee, but lead one of our subcommittees. So this morning I was on a call, or a webinar, with the new release of the Human Development Report by the United Nations Population Division. And what the good news is they no longer measure just the gross domestic product, but of how a country is doing, but really look at human development. And sadly, 90% of countries have lost ground over the last 5 to 6 years, which is very, very alarming. However, I just want to share one quote that came from Her Excellency Mary Robinson, who now chairs the group of UN elders, who said, "The best world is still ahead of us," end of quote, if we make the right choices. So I think we all have opportunity to make choices and advocate for the right choices to benefit a society for all ages, which is our committee's theme motto, building a society towards a society for all ages. So with that, our subcommittees do the work all year long with their committees. So I'd like to start with well, first, I'm going to share with you the executive committee met in retreat and reiterated our 5 goals. Remember, this is 2021 to 2023. So we just reaffirmed the ones we established a year ago. 1, to facilitate the open-ended working group to move forward on drafting a convention on the human rights of older persons. 2, strengthen and engage our global alliances. 3, engage membership and reach out to encourage more involvement in our work. 4, diversify our financial resources through fundraising to support our goals. And 5, use these program meetings, our newsletters, and social media to support our work. So that's the context in which all of our subcommittees are working. So let me move to the first subcommittee, which is on the protection and human rights of older persons, ably chaired by Frances Dynedon and Susan Summers. Unfortunately, Susan Summers is just returning from Europe. Frances, please give us an update and what's on your agenda for this coming year.
Thank you, Cynthia, and hello to everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about what has been happening at the global level, as well as the actual work that the subcommittee does. As many of you already know, the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging held its first meeting in 2011 for the purpose of strengthening the protection of human rights of older persons by considering the existing international framework of the human rights of older persons and identifying possible gaps and how better to address them, including by considering the feasibility of further instruments and measures. The decision to establish that working group was prompted by a 2010 report of the Secretary General that drew attention to the need to recognize older persons as a human rights issue and not just an issue of medical rehabilitation and social welfare. The report pointed out the need for international standards and the need to prohibit discrimination. It called attention to the right to social security, social protection, to adequate housing, to prevent elder abuse, violence, and neglect, and other issues that the Open-Ended Working Group has discussed over the years. Everything but gaps in existing human rights treaties. In 2016, the Open-Ended Working Group decided on a list of 14 issues to be discussed, 2 per year. The last 2 will take place in 2024, 2 years from now. The 2 topics to be discussed by the Open-Ended Working Group in 2023 are 1, right to health and access to health services, and 2, social inclusion. The Open-Ended Working Group also considers the reports of the independent expert appointed by the Human Rights Council on the enjoyment of all human rights of older persons. The NGO Committee on Aging, this committee, has been following the discussions at all 12 sessions and has facilitated the participation of our members as well as members of other NGOs in the discussions. We work closely with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People, which has a global reach of over 400 members, plus their affiliates in all regions around the world, all advocating for an international legal instrument to protect the rights of older persons, much like the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and like the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. There was no agreement on the request made by Germany and Austria in April 2021 for the report prepared by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on gaps in the international human rights framework to be discussed by the open-ended working group. But lucky for us, the Human Rights Council in October of 2021, in its first fully substantive resolution on the rights of older persons, requested the Office of the High Commissioner for a report on normative standards and obligations under international law in relation to the promotion and protection of the human rights of older persons, and to convene a multi-stakeholder meeting to discuss it and report back to the Council. Finally, a discussion on gaps. The multi-stakeholder meeting was held last week, and the discussions and conclusions pointed to the need for a convention. Information on that meeting is on our website already, so please go and check it out, because there's a listing of all the speakers and the statements, including statements made by civil society. So now we have Geneva fully involved, and we are working hard to ensure that the open-ended working group in New York will take into account the recommendations of the multi-stakeholder meeting that was just held, and the subsequent Human Rights Council resolution that will be adopted in early 2023 in order for the open-ended working group to move the process forward. It will be a big step forward when and if the open-ended working group decides to start drafting a convention. So our subcommittee, which I co-chair with Susan Summers, prepares talking points that NGOs can use when they make their statements at meetings. We advocate by speaking to the representatives of the permanent missions to the United Nations, urging their participation in the working group. And we also make ourselves visible at other intergovernmental meetings, like the Commission for Social Development, the Commission on the Status of Women, and the High-Level Political Forum that discusses the Sustainable Development Goals. And Erica will be talking about that in a little while. We also participate as observers at meetings of the Group of Friends of Older Persons, which has 25 member states, committed to having a convention to protect the rights of older persons. And we collaborate with them on how best to move the process forward. We, of course, also collaborate with the NGO committees on aging in Geneva and Vienna. Our work is mostly monitoring what is going on at the global level, making ourselves visible and lobbying to make sure that older persons are included when there are discussions about not leaving anyone behind, about social protection, about climate change, about healthcare, right to work, about violence, abuse and neglect, about lifelong learning, gender equality, food security, about poverty, about anything that touches the lives of older persons. I urge all of our members to start thinking about contributing to the discussions of the open-ended working group next year. And I've already mentioned that the two topics are right to health and access to health services and social inclusion. So please watch our website, and Amal will be talking more about it, because the instructions and requests for input will be coming from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the UN. Susan and I and our subcommittee members would welcome any suggestions or requests that would help you in your work to not only care for older persons or do research on aging issues or help older persons live a life of dignity, but also to ensure that our human rights are fully protected. Information on all of this is regularly updated on our website so that our members can make use of the information for their work. So we will be hearing more from Amal later on about all the activities that are going on at the UN. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And heed her pitch. They need a lot of people. There's a lot of work there. Okay, let's move on to Global Alliances, chaired by Erica Dar. AARP International.
Thank you,
Erica.
Cynthia. Thank you, Francis, and welcome everybody. Just to say, for our work with Global Alliances, our focus is to ensure, as Francis says, that our messaging goes out to a range of partners, and that is within the UN system and also externally to, NGOs, academics, private sector, and influencers. Francis touched upon, and Cynthia opened with the Human Development Report, just to say that I co-chair the Stakeholder Group on Aging, of which many on this call whose organizations are members, but for those not familiar, in 2015, the UN came up with the Sustainable Development Goals as the next program of work that all member states would be working on to leave no one behind. And through the advocacy of many present here, I have to give a big shout out to Jim Collins, who is on this call, who was our chair of the Committee on Aging and worked diligently with member states to ensure that older persons were included in the Sustainable Development Goals. We knew we couldn't get a separate goal, so we basically advocated to have language that would be inclusive of older persons in the goals, so taking a life course approach. We have a website called the stakeholdergrouponaging.org, and that's aging with an E, spelled like the British. And you can find all the information there in terms of who we are. Currently, we are 17 international organizations. We are part of the major groups and other stakeholders. The other stakeholders include persons with disabilities, and we monitor and the implementation of the SDGs and report to the high-level political forum, which is the annual meeting convened by the Department for Economic and Social Affairs, monitoring the implementation of the SDGs. As Cynthia noted, there's a setback in terms of how countries are progressing now in terms of development. Obviously, COVID has had a huge impact in eradicating poverty, in eradicating hunger. Strides that were made are now lost. Next year, so each year when the HLPF meets, it reviews certain goals. So next year, the goal that we will focus on is goal number 11 on sustainable cities and communities, where we will be advocating on what we've been doing all these years for age-friendly cities and communities. I invite you all to start thinking about inputs into the position paper. You can go online and look at the position paper that we submit every year on behalf of the Stakeholder Group on Aging to get an idea as to how we go about this. So that's one area that we're very involved with Global Alliances. We also work on, Francis talked about rights, but this year we've been focusing on women and issues of older women. And those of you, Judy Lear is one of our stalwarts who was responsible for us getting CEDAW, and we owe her a debt of gratitude. But sadly, older women are still invisible. So we have to work with even more diligence on the topic of making older women's issues more visible in all forums. And so, as Francis was saying, whether you're attending a meeting of Indigenous or you're attending a meeting on disabilities, youth, work, whatever your issue area is, make sure, sorry, Judy, I don't understand what you're signaling. Okay, make sure that you raise the issue of older women when we talk about violence and abuse, etc. I'll leave it there. If anybody is more interested in the work on how we can partner better and with new groups, do reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay. And the next subcommittee I'm going to call on is older women. But at this moment in our meeting, I think we should pause before the next subcommittee report and focus on a giant of a person in the form of Queen Elizabeth, who passed today. So let's just take a moment to reflect. Thank you all. Now I shall call on Robin Fenley, who's the chair of the newly reestablished Subcommittee on Older Women, who also this year is also chair of the UN International Day of Older Persons for New York Fellow Observance, which is on October 3rd. So I'm going to ask her to really talk about the subcommittee, but then also just to give you highlights and what we need from each and all of you to help us make October 3rd a very big success. So Robin.
Okay, thanks, Cynthia, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. And it is kind of poignant and appropriate that we're doing this follow-up on the subcommittee on older women with the passing of Queen Elizabeth. I mean, we talk about someone who was really a woman ahead of her time, I guess, just by virtue of her position, certainly, and for how long, et cetera. But yeah, you know what, between her and the people that I have had the very good fortune to know in this revitalized Older Women's Committee, Judy and Betty, most of the people who are here who have been part of the Older Women Subcommittee before, really trailblazers. And frankly, I have just been taking my lead from them. They are really knowledgeable and have lots of ideas. And so it's really been a fun group to work with. So first of all, I would say anybody who wants to have good time, while doing some work, come join our committee. It is a great group of women, and we laugh and we do work, so, and get mad at the same time, so some of the things that we did this past year, and again, this was a critically important, the work that the women who had been part of this group before, the CSW session, we had a really great session in March on older women and environmental justice. And the people who came to do the presentations were folks that were recommended by women in the subcommittee who had known these speakers for a good long time. So that was really great. And again, talking about the impact of climate on older women, and that's a whole other story. We also, and in another one of my hats with IAGG, also at CSW, continuing with older women and the impact of climate change. There was another session, and again, these are lots of older women around the world learning about the value of Indigenous women in the communities in their various countries. Really, really important. In June, we did some work, and I think Erica, you may be mentioning this later, the work on WEAD. What was interesting about that was we were talking about abuse, elder abuse with the perspective on older women, but also people who were specifically women who were disabled. And it was an opportunity to bring in the hearing impaired, as well as we were talking about caregivers and persons with dementia. And so that was really an important session that was out there and well received. In July, and here you go again, Erica, with the stakeholder group on aging and discussing SDG 5, the equality and empowerment of older women, there was the opportunity for our subcommittee to be represented during the statement at the high-level political forum. Let's see. So then we move into, actually, and then everything became the UN International Day of Older Persons, and that's where we are right now. This has been quite an event. I can see it's going to be quite an event, and I'm going to shift back and forth because between what we are doing with the International Day of Older Persons and where I see this committee, the subcommittee moving forward, it's continuing to raise awareness about the resilience of older women. So much is, you get to be, again, it was 49, although I think, Francis, they've changed the age now of data collection. It's a little bit higher, but after age 49, UN would stop collecting data on women. Well, that's ridiculous, because we know that women beyond 49 are contributing and doing meaningful things in their community. So between our Older Women Subcommittee with raising awareness of just that fact and trying to ensure that data that supports that is available, that is something that we absolutely want to get out. Data is what drives policy. And so this is what is so critical to be able to get anybody's point forward, is to have the data to support your point. And so moving forward, we are looking at, yes, continuing to have the discussion of putting older women forward, but we're going to look specifically at the violence and abuse against older women. And again, you can hear this is like a repeating theme, right? Because I think this is so important, that we each support the work of the various subcommittees, because together it's, it's one tree with lots of little birds chirping, saying the same message, So that's what we're looking to be doing moving forward. But in terms of IDOP, this is going to be very exciting. I'm very excited about the panel that we have with starting with Ramsey as our moderator, who will capably draw from our participants, who include Claudia Mahler, the independent expert on the rights of older persons, enjoyment and rights, Alana Officer, Lorena Aguilar, Bilkis Tahira, and Carol Ojengo. We are looking at the impact of the socioeconomic sphere, environment, health on older women. And we want to also, and the challenges of just getting through every day. And then also looking at what is the day-to-day experience. So we had, through Bilkis, we're going to be talking about economic justice. And Carol will be talking about what all of those spheres look like for the women in Kenya, how in terms of the abuse and the difficulties that they have getting through their day-to-day. So we are very excited about it. We are continuing we're getting down to the nitty-gritty time of translations to be able to ensure greater inclusivity of participation. It will be aired on UN Web TV. And I would ask, the registration is up on our Committee on Aging's website. So please register. Encourage any friends that you know to register, organizations, etc. If you need You need flyers to go out. I'm sure we'll be able to send them to you. So between coming to you, the UN IDOP, and joining our subcommittee on older women, come on down.
Great. Thank you. And I just want to give an addition to say, this Committee on Aging in New York at the UN collaborates closely with the Committee on Aging in Geneva and the one in Vienna. Geneva will be the overall theme is older persons in a changing world, but each of our sites has a different focus. And Geneva this year is focusing on older persons as active agents in climate change. And their session is tentatively scheduled the 30th of September from 1 to 2 p.m. in Geneva. And then Vienna will precede ours on Monday, the 3rd of October, because they're 6 hours ahead. And theirs will be on also resilience of older women. So stay tuned, and all of that information will be on the DESA website, as well as on our NGO Committee on Aging. So you can have a weekend of hearing about the day before. The UN International Day of Older Persons is technically the 1st of October, which falls on a Saturday this year. So Geneva's doing it the day before, and New York and Vienna are doing it on the Monday after. Okay, so next up, I'd like to call our program committee is co-chaired by Frances Zinedine and Sandra Timmerman, but Sandy will be making the report. Sandy?
Yes, hello everyone. First, I want to say Frances is just a wonderful partner, and we've worked together on all the programs. And I know, Frances, we are so pleased that you were able to convince Amal to speak to us today. She always provides such terrific insights. And so thank you for being here, Amal. We appreciate it very much for our opening program this fall. So what the program committee tries to do is connect the dots between our global aging issues and our work at the UN. So we try to do that to help us advocate. And as Cynthia mentioned, in our overall goals, we really want to build the programs to give us the skills or the information to move the convention forward if we can do that. We do also try to make alliances through our program. So last year, for example, we worked with the NGO Committee on Migration on a program on older people and migration. And that, I think, was a particular breakthrough for us, but it not only builds alliances for our cause, but gives us the information we need to really be more effective. So what I would say for this coming year, we are scheduling our meetings once a month unless there's a special event. And next month is a very special event. It's the International Day of Older Persons, as you heard. So we skip those meetings, but generally it's the first Thursday of the month. And we hope that you will always join us for those. For November, we're working on a program on skill building on communications and advocacy, working with one of our partners from our communications subcommittee. And then for the future in December, we're planning one on long-term care and nursing homes. For January, we're looking at brain health, how it connects to our work with the Decade of Healthy Aging at the World Health Organization. And then into the spring, we are eager to work with UN Youth and to bring more attention to how we can get our younger counterparts at the UN. And they are quite visible and powerful to really think about us as part of a life course approach to different kinds of topics. They had just done one on ageism, looking at it from the youth perspective. We want them to also look at it from the perspective of the older person in ageism, and that's just an example. So we're eager to have you join us if this is of interest, to help us generate ideas, to contact people who might be good speakers, and to really do some of the work to make these programs happen. And Frances, I don't know whether you have anything to add to that, but you're our leader in this, so I appreciate all the work you do.
Thanks, Sandy. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a great committee and always welcomes new ideas. As Sandy said, she and Frances are always eager to have more people help them. We'll move on to membership, which is chaired by actually our treasurer, Katie Weiss. Katie?
Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, I wear two hats, so you're going to get kind of both the treasurer perspective and the membership perspective, but I will try to be very brisk. One, just to assure everyone that the committee is in stable financial shape. We are on rock solid ground, which is great. And our development team this year has done a superb job on securing support for the celebration of UN IDOP. And that involves accommodating speakers and some travel and an awful lot of administrative work behind the scenes. So we need the support, and the development team has stepped up and made that happen. For our other expenses as a committee, we rely on membership dues. And our dues are a modest $35 a year or even less, $15 for students. And while everyone you've heard today and all the committee members operate as volunteers, that's where our work is done. We do have a lot of out-of-pocket expenses to support our website, our various email programs, our online platforms, any printing we need for handouts and resources. And that's where we rely totally on membership dues to support those sort of everyday behind the scenes costs. So we really look at the membership as a way to support our work, but it's also an entree for people to get involved in the hands-on work of the various subcommittees, as my colleagues have been describing. I will say, if you renew now or join now, between now and the end of the year, your membership will be fully paid up through the end of 2023. So you get some bonus time. Also, we do have, so there's my pitch for generally making the formal commitment to join up. But we do have a membership team, and we can always use help in better communications, outreach to our members, our existing members and potential members, and also working to do kind of more targeted outreach to help people connect with a subcommittee or a project where they can really get hands-on participation in our work. So anybody who finds that interesting, reach out to us, and we can always use help and appreciate it. And with that, I'll sign off.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to move to our communications subcommittee that's incredibly active with 4 issues of our new newsletter a year. So I'll call on Martha Beil.
We're one of the newer committees. We were formed just about 3 years ago with a charge to enhance our communications to various publics about our activities, but even more about what's going on at the UN and how we contribute to the campaign for inclusion of human rights of older persons, that should appear high on the agenda of the UN. And of course, the main areas that we're looking at as a committee is the move to have a convention, a formal treaty on the human rights of older persons, and inclusion of older persons in all the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And what we try to do, our activities as a communications committee, is to support those campaigns by giving people more background information about what those issues are, and what the campaigns for a convention are like, and how it's going, and how people can contribute. And we do that. We've had probably, I mean, the committee already has some communication channels. We have a website. Our corresponding secretary, Maud Abu, sends out regular emails letting us know of events coming up, etc. But we wanted to do something more. And so our major activities have been, as Cynthia mentioned, a quarterly newsletter. And we try to time them to upcoming major UN events. And so this one is timed. The next one is timed to come out the week of the 19th, just before a closing registration date for UN IDOP. And we try to provide in those issues background information about the issues that will be discussed in those events. So this year, this quarter, our newsletter will focus on human rights of older persons and some of the context that you may want to have as you think about, older women, as you think about older women and their place internationally and their place at the UN. We will also have in this coming issue a guest editorial by Gary Hack, who was brought to us by our member, Gloria Gutman. He's a climate scientist who has written about older people and climate change. And that's not immediately in the IDOP, but it is an ongoing issue for the UN. And we want to be sure that older people are on the agenda when climate change is considered. And the other major, but I would say, by the way, that the editorial by Gary Hack is our first outside editorial contributor beyond our committee staff, which has done most of the first 3 issues. And we are interested in publishing more guest columns that will relate to the issues before the UN that we will be covering. And so if you think you might have something that we want to promote and you want to promote that's specific to international aging, you should let us know. And the other major area that we are working on is to grow our social media presence. Up until now, we have now a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and a LinkedIn account. And up until now, our, I'll say retiring communications person who has been the project director for the committee, Anna Strout, will be, I say retiring, she's probably 26, but she's taken another new and exciting job. And so she will not be able to continue doing our social media. And we would very much like to have the help of someone who is interested in aging and social media savvy, international aging specifically, and is social media savvy. And please let us know. But we're looking for all sorts of help. Anyone who's interested in joining our committee should let us know, post here, or let us know somehow. But we're particularly interested in someone with social media skills and interests.
Mhm.
You know, I was about
Okay.
to add, Cynthia, I was about to add, but maybe you have a more general way. I was about to put my email in the chat if people want to let me know, but everybody else is asking, is recruiting also and hasn't done that. So maybe you have some organized way that you can get information
Okay,
for everybody
okay.
and
Well,
distribute.
I can certainly, both my email address and Francis's are on our website. You can reach us through there. But I can also direct you to any of the chairs if they haven't noted their emails in the chat. So mine is just cynthia.stewin@gmail.com, but it's also on the website and it will get to me. So either way is fine. We just would like to know, just be sure you give us your name and your email address. That's all. Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Martha. I appreciate it. And last but not least is Bill Smith, who chairs our development committee. And as was stated, done a great job. Thank you. Bill?
Well, thank you. I think Katie Weiss had started off with some comments about volunteerism. And I think it's important for you to know that the entire NGO Committee on Aging is volunteer and spends an awful lot of time and energy and makes connections for our work to be successful. Just from a fund development standpoint, the other thing is that we do have an initiative underway to get our own tax exemption number, and that will help us reach out again to other funding sources for us. We have had in the past some repeat and very generous supporters. Pfizer Pharmaceutical was involved with us for years. AARP has been just a stalwart and has been with us all the time. And not only do they give us funds, but they also give us exceptional talent. And I see Jim O'Neill on the line. I see Erica. You know, we are getting the best of the best in terms of getting our job done. M&T Bank is one of many banks that we're now approaching who are interested in supporting us on some of these issues. And we're receiving some repeat contributions, which is great. Emblem is another example of that. Chiropodist is another example. But that's a perfect example to really highlight how it's one-to-one type of solicitation that helps us get our message across to the funding agency as to what we do and how we can do more with some of their resources. We have in the past flown people in from from developing countries for our open-ended working group or for the NGO Committee on Aging activities like the IDLP. And for some of those efforts, we have to pay for translations as well as all of the back office information that Katie did reference in her presentation. So, and then finally, we are being considered for an anonymous gift right now, which is sort of exciting to me because then I probably don't have to send a letter of appreciation. Anyway, it's, you know, we take money from anyone, and when we renew membership, we also give every member an opportunity to make a contribution to the work of the NGO Committee on Aging. And we very much appreciate all of those efforts. So again, volunteerism is key. We don't have the resources to have paid staff in many regards to do all the work that we have to do. So we do collaborate with other international groups, like IFA is supporting us today, as they always do. And you know, we just look to take help from wherever we can get it. So I think that's about what I have to say today. Thanks, Cynthia.
Okay. And I think the only thing you didn't say is that it's all of our jobs to identify what might be resources that we could tap. And it's always the personal connection and the personal outreach. So any of you that have any thoughts, you know, feel free to share them. I know Bill will greatly appreciate them, as will I. So before I move on to part 2 of our program, I would just like to make a brief announcement of Helen Hamlin. Many of you will remember, long time, she served as chair of this committee years and years ago. She was the one who brought me into the International Federation on Aging fold at the UN. And she turns 100 on September 13th. So think of Helen on September 13th. Our NGO Committee on Aging will be reaching out to her with a special message. So anyway, now I'd like to introduce Amal Abu Rafe, who probably needs no introduction to all of us here because as the director of the program unit on aging in DESA, we couldn't do any of our work without her. And there are not enough accolades to give this woman for what she has done to raise the awareness. And a lot of it is behind the scenes, but working interdepartmentally, intersectorally at the UN, she is our champion. So let me now introduce Amal Abu Rafe, our fearless leader, to give you an update about what's up at the UN and aging. Amal?
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and hello everyone from a budget car rental in a town somewhere in Philadelphia. I apologize for this. I've had to change my leave days because of a bureau meeting, but I did not want to miss out, so I planned it so that the family can have their pit stop. Cynthia and Francis asked me to talk about aging at the UN, new developments and new opportunities. And perhaps the title should have been that you, the NGO committees on aging, have your work cut out for you. And we at the UN count on that work. So over the past weeks, I've seen promising signs of change related to older persons. Most of these signs are confidential that I cannot share with you, but that in itself signals that, you know, hopefully something is coming in the next months that will be crucial to changing how the UN works when it comes to older persons and aging issues. So let me first reflect on the theme of Older Persons Day to say that being chosen by its constituents says it all. So against the backdrop of a pandemic that we know, according to WHO statistics and in collaboration with other UN agencies, the pandemic has so far directly or indirectly cost the lives of over 12 million older persons in 24 months. And yet older women and older men are calling this year for public recognition of their productivity, their strengths, resourcefulness, humanity, and participation in sustainable development. And for the first time since the pandemic, as Robin had mentioned, we're in hosting the event, fingers crossed, in person. So I want to thank Robin for her hard work and leadership in collaboration with our colleague Chaton Fila on the work preparing for this event in New York. And I encourage you all to register and to join. And the timing, as Cynthia said, has been aligned with colleagues in Geneva and Vienna so that we can all get to benefit from all the various discussions under the overall theme for this year. Now, meanwhile, our team have been crunching numbers. Our colleague Miriam has been taking a deep dive into the recently released DESA World Population Prospects. The revision first took a look at the global figures. And we found that by 2030, the number of older persons worldwide is projected to outnumber youth, which is something we already knew from the 2019 revision. But what is new is that older persons are also projected to double the number of children under age 5. And the Sustainable Development Goal Report of 2022, which was released earlier this summer, detailed the reversal of years of progress in eradicating poverty and hunger, improving health and education, providing basic services, and much more because of the pandemic and its impact. It also pointed out areas that need urgent action in order to rescue the global goals and deliver meaningful progress for people and for the planet by 2030. But as we all know, in order to find the roadmap out of this crisis and think beyond these crises, we not only need to understand where we are, but we also have to be quite aware of where we are heading. And yet, the compelling figures that I've just shared with you fell short of anchoring the issue of aging in the Global Development Agenda and its related efforts. It's not even reflected in the report. So you have your work cut out for you, and we are counting on that work. And last month, the Secretary General told the General Assembly that the global economic forecast is perilous and financing for development is drying up, and that geopolitical competition has intensified and new variants of COVID-19 are again disrupting lives and livelihoods in parts of the world and setting back global recovery. And that global shocks are unabating and growing. That's something that we all see and know as well. And the Secretary General said to the member states that business as usual will almost certainly guarantee a future of constant crises and devastating risks, and that our common agenda, a report that he provided in which there is a framework and an opportunity to unite the international community around solutions to the situation, including, for example, his proposals for some. The Secretary General sees these as the last best chance to get on track back to sustainable growth and resilience. Against this background, and as member states are envisioning this future, we know from the figures we've been looking at that by 2050, the number of older persons worldwide is projected to be more than 3 times the number of children under age 5, to be more than the number of children under age 12, and to be at a level of about 2/3 higher than the number of youth worldwide. Yet such compelling figures still fall short of anchoring the issue of aging in the global development deliberations. So you have your work cut out for you, and we count on that work. In the coming weeks, we will be providing technical support to Argentina, who will be facilitating the negotiations of the Group of 77 and China's proposed draft resolution on aging in the General Assembly. And 2 technical reports will be considered by member states for updates to this resolution. The first is the report of the Secretary General on digital technologies and older persons. And if you want to Google and pull out that report online, it's A/77/134. And the second report is that of the independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights of older persons, which is on older persons and the right to adequate housing. And the symbol for that is A/77/239. I have to say it's an excellent report. I encourage you all to read these reports and use the information in them within your advocacy work. And in speaking to the report we had drafted on digital technologies, I wanted to share a couple of figures with you. We included in that report available data for you to use. And in that data, we found that it points to age as a key factor influencing the digital divide. According to the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, which is the official source on global information communication technology statistics, more than 90% of young people aged 75 years or over in most high-income countries. The digital gap was significantly larger when comparing both age groups in middle-income economies. And when disaggregated by sex, the data showed a gender gap, with older men having higher rates of internet use than older women across nearly all countries, regardless of the income level of the individual. The report analyzed the impact of digital technologies on older persons and identified policy implications for older persons, and we linked it to the Secretary General's roadmap for digital cooperation. And if you're wondering what other UN agencies have been up to, the report also featured select work carried out by the UN system on aging on older persons. We did that through the Interagency Group on Aging. This is now a practice that we're doing. We reach out to colleagues and say, what is it that you want us to highlight in the Secretary General report? And they send it to us, and we embedded links. And because the report is on digital technologies, we've embedded, we've included QR codes as well. So please use these. This is information at your fingertips, and use that information in your advocacy work, in your statements. We look forward to member states considering the recommendations provided at the end of this report and the report of the independent expert to enrich the content of the resolution. And by the way, in as far as both housing and ICTs, there's hardly any reference in the existing resolution to both. So we're really looking forward to some of the recommendations being picked up.
We'll move into the time for your questions, comments, concerns with the Q&A. And thank you, Erica Dar, for being our moderator of this section. I turn it over to you, dear Erica.
Thank you, Cynthia. And it's a pity that Amal had to leave, because I'm sure our attendees would have liked to have asked her a few questions. I also saw that our previous chair of the Committee on Aging in Geneva had left, was with us and had left, which is also a loss, because she could have talked a little more about what is going on at the Human Rights Council in Geneva on the rights of older persons. So I invite everybody to, this is your opportunity, like Cynthia started the meeting, and all the subcommittee chairs and Francis put a call out to say, get involved, be active. This is a chance for you to give us comments. How do we do our job better? What should we focus on, not focus on, where you can help us? But I'm going to ask a question of Francis, if you don't mind, because Amal touched upon it. She talked about the Our Common Agenda. Now, you and I and Maud on this call and some others have been following it, but we haven't really talked much about it. But I think it is an important, I mean, you know, the Secretary General, you know, saying what Amal just quoted him as saying, that we're not going to, you know, achieve global, you know, the development status by 2030. Can you speak to the OCA and why this is so important for us as advocates of older persons to be involved with?
Yes, thank you, Erica. First of all, our common agenda is supposed to turbocharge the Sustainable Development Goals. And there are quite a number of recommendations, including recommendations for holding major events at the UN. For instance, coming up is the Summit on Education. And in this context, I would really urge our members and everybody attending here, it's actually part of my wrapping up, but you really need to go on the UN website and pay attention to all the events that will be taking place this year during this General Assembly. Our common agenda, now that you've reminded me, I will also put on the website, as soon as I get off the meeting, a statement that was made by Chile. Chile is actually has the responsibility of chairing the group of Friends of Older Persons. A statement that was made by Chile about our common agenda, which was very well received in terms of the need to be inclusive and the need to include older persons. It was a big push for attention to be given to older persons. We need to, as we move forward, think about how we as civil society will be contributing to discussions on the future. There's going to be a social summit next year and a summit for the future. And all of this is also part of what Erica had been talking about in the context of the high-level political forum and the major groups and other stakeholders, because there are 21 major groups and other stakeholders, women's major group, children and youth major group, farmers major group, trade unions, indigenous, persons with disabilities, etc. And in that context, as part of the stakeholder group on aging, we are also looking at ways on how to ensure civil society participation. And participation is not just listening to what is being said, but actually having some influence. So we will be following this, and we will be putting information through notification that Maud will be sending out, and also on our website, to encourage all of you involved in issues related to older persons, how you can get information for your work, as well as what all of you can contribute and alert us and participate, because this is what the NGO Committee on Aging is all about. It's facilitating the participation of our members. I hope that.
Yeah, Francis. Yeah, thank you. So since I'm waiting for people to put questions in the chat, I'm going to use the moderator's prerogative, because I see there are people on this call from other parts of the world. Sharon Fisher, I'm going to put you on the spot. Sorry, I hope you haven't walked off, but still there. Welcome, Sharon. You know, can you give us some information? You've heard a lot of what we've been doing here, and I know Sir Optimist, I'm a member, by the way, thanks to Francis and Betty. But tell us about how you are working in Canada at the national level on advocacy issues on women, for instance. I know that's one of your passions, correct? Or how Sir Optimist is really using messaging or communications. How can we, you've heard us speak. Tell us how we can do our jobs better, if you will. Thank you.
Well, that's a lofty question for this expert group. But in Sir Optimist International, during my presidency, I launched a campaign called The Road to Equality. And I asked, one of the topics I wanted to look at was older women, recognizing that many of our members dealt with teenagers and young mothers and children, but very few projects focused on older women. And I went to Francis, my good friend Francis, and said, why is it? What's going on? Is it an awareness issue that we still aren't really aware? We just think older people are frail and the government takes care of them. So I wanted to try and reverse that. So she introduced me to the Global Alliance, and we funded the campaign for them for 2022. And then likewise for your event in October, supported that. And my work locally is with something called the Association of Community Response Networks in British Columbia, where we look to the local level for a coordinated community response to issues around adult abuse, neglect, and self-neglect, and see at the local level. And what I'm seeing is there's the local level, and then there's the international level, and there's a bit of a gap in the middle. The people at the local level aren't, in many cases, as familiar with what's going on internationally. And of course, the conversations at the UN are what drives a lot of what ends up local. People just don't know the path that they're navigating. So to engage at the national level, who are then supporting things like the convention, I think is really important to get that messaging down into our local organizations. And I see Gloria Gutman's on the call. She's on the board of directors of the organization I actually work for. So I guess we'll be having another conversation about this So anyway, that's what I did, and hopefully it's done something. I went to something locally at a conference recently, and Amal was the guest speaker piping in. So the worlds are connecting and colliding in a good way, and I'm so happy to see that. So hopefully this convention business can get some traction. So thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, Gloria has been an advocate for years with the International Network on the Prevention of Elder Abuse. But thank you. That's a really good segue back to Canada to Gloria, because Gloria, you've been working on issues of climate change for a very long time. And you were on the committee that helped put the side event together on climate change and older persons. So welcome. And if you don't mind just sharing with us the work that you've been doing in your organization and some of the key messaging that everybody here can take away on climate change and the impacts of climate change on older persons. Thanks, Gloria.
Well, I began getting involved with this particular topic from the point of view of emergencies and disasters, because so many of them are dealing with environmental change that come about because of climate change. So that's an area that is emerging more and more. And our work, when I say our, I mean my work with Gary Hack, has very much been to draw attention to the resiliency of older people, and some of the lessons we can learn from those who have lived through assorted droughts and floods and all of the climatic kinds of events. At the same time as recognizing that within the older community, there are some who are particularly at risk. And so certainly, COVID is a disaster, but it's a different kind of disaster that has hit very hard in the nursing home population. And it's put that on the radar. So in a sense, COVID has given us an opportunity to advance many of the issues of older women, of older people in general, because of the attention that it's drawn. But we want to make sure we get the positive side as well as the negative side.
Thanks, Gloria. I see a question in the chat, and I'm not sure who to direct this question at. I will read it out, and whoever has the answer can raise their hand, and I will call upon you and you can unmute your mic. The question being, why isn't aging top of mind at the UN, even though the statistics are so compelling? Who is going to be the one who might offer an insight? Chateau, can I ask you, as a UN person and the work you're doing with the interagency group that Amal mentioned, why does DESA think that there is an issue with not being able to convince people? Amal also mentioned that there is some movement that we're not privy to. So Chateau, if you don't mind.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Erica. I'm not sure if I can answer that question, but basically from what Amal was saying, in which I'm sure we all agree, is that issues of aging, despite the statistics or the evidence that the recent deaths connected with the pandemic, it's just one of those things that is out there in the face of, and we cannot deny that it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And yet we see some kind of hesitance but I mean, hesitation. But over the years, as Amal mentioned, we've seen some kind of hope or evidence that suggests that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So as she mentioned, it's still a little, confidential, or I don't know how she put it, but I think what I'm getting is that with lobbying and advocacy that you are all doing right now, I think, the message is clearly getting to, the higher echelons of people, starting with the Secretary General himself. And we've seen with the adoption or the proclamation of the a decade of healthy aging. We've seen, other, interventions. I mean, even though, there's still room for improvement in our common agenda, I feel like there's so many advocacy, efforts out there. And I just want to say and emphasize that all the work that we're doing, whether it's from an advocacy point of view, the Committee on Aging, the lobbying and so forth, is really evident. And we're just hopeful for more tangible results. So
Thanks.
Erica.
That's a really good analysis for us to get a hang of where we stand. Cynthia, you had something you wanted to add?
I do. And I think, Chateau, you touched on it in terms of, WHO doing their brilliant report on ageism, showing that half the world holds ageist attitudes. And I think that's something that each and every one of us can do. And that is because ageism is how how I think, act, and feel about aging. And we have to be, for those of us who are older persons, have to be the role models to not disparage ourselves and to call it out every time we see it. And not, we're tired of not being heard. We're tired of being patronized. We're tired of being cast aside because we're not, quote, productive in the world's eyes. And so I think each of us can do that every day of our lives, whether it's with our own immediate families and the intergenerational nature of families, whether it's our neighborhood, or whether it's who and where we belong in organizations. We need to call out ageism and call it what it is. And if they need any help understanding its roots, they can read Becca Levy's new book called Breaking the Age Code to understand how we got where we are.
Thanks, Cynthia. Francis?
I just want to add a little something about what tends to be important at the UN. First of all, kudos to Amal, Julia, and Chateau, the three champions, as Cynthia has mentioned, on aging. Three professional staff at the UN dealing with all these issues. At the UN, a lot of the issues, all of the issues are mandated by governments, right? The governments provide the direction for this Secretary General to undertake work in whatever area. And along comes the budget. So you have departments, you have sections, how many undersecretaries general, assistant secretary generals, and it's all the hierarchy. And the bigger the department, or the bigger the section, or the bigger the unit, that means the bigger the issue. Unfortunately, there's been very few resources, and it is a miracle, an absolute miracle, that aging issues are even at the stage that they are because of these three magnificent women working on aging issues. So in answer to that question, is not on the top of the mind, partly because there's so many other issues and so many other, quote, more important. But again, thanks to Amal, Julia, and Chateau, aging issues have been coming to the fore.
You know, Francis, I know we have 1 minute, and I'm going to use my moderator's privilege to just end with Craig Mokaiba from the Office of the Human Rights Commissioners. And it always says this, so I'm going to quote him, that the mortal sin of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was the exclusion of age. When Eleanor Roosevelt and everybody got together, whoever, I can't remember the others, some of you who've been around the UN, I mean, Chateau, Francis, you probably know, but, you know, they talk about, you know, race or sex, but not age. Now, he calls that the mortal sin of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I guess at that point in time, people didn't expect to live long, right? Longevity wasn't an issue, and thanks to science and nutrition and all that we've learned, people are living longer. However, it is the quality of life that not everybody ages equally. And so, I mean, Amal, thank you, Chateau, for your thumbs up. So I think on that note, we have a lot to think about. Amal says we've got our work cut out for us, which I see as a call to action, which means we need more members, more advocates. A lot of you are on this call from overseas. Please don't hesitate to join our committee and offer your expertise. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Francis to close out the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica, for conducting the Q&A segment. And thank you for those who participated and answered the questions. First, of course, I want to thank Amal so much for her presentation. I'm sorry that we lost her part of the way. As Cynthia has said, Amal is our champion, and we are always bothering her and her small team with thousands of questions and seeking guidance on how we can support the United Nations and how we can do our advocacy work more effectively. She's an amazing partner in our efforts to protect the human rights of older persons. So thank you, Amal, Julia, and Chateau. Of course, COVID-19 has prevented us from meeting together in person, but because we've had to hold our meetings virtually, we have reached many more people from around the world and from around this country and Northern America and Canada, and we are grateful for that. Now that you have all learned or reminded about the work of the NGO Committee on Aging, I would like to suggest a few actions that all of you can take. 1, take a good look at the work that you all do and see where it fits in with what you have heard today. 2, give some thought to volunteering your expertise. We will be holding elections next year, for example, so consider running for office or consider joining one of the subcommittees. Description of the subcommittees are on the website, together with the names and email addresses of the chairs of those subcommittees. In the meantime, 3, send us any suggestions you may have for improving how we serve you. You get our email addresses from our website, as I just said, but remember, when you send an email, to put NGO Committee on Aging in the subject line to get our attention, because as we all know, we get too many emails to deal with. 4, our website provides links to many organizations and to many reports that we think will be of interest to you and your work. Do tell us what additional information you would like to have. 5, also tell us what topics you would like discussed at our program events. Sandy has given you a summary of what's lying ahead, but we would really like you to tell us what would be of interest to you. And I had mentioned this before. 6, get on the UN website and watch events on UN Web TV. You will get an idea of how meetings are conducted. You will get an idea of where governments stand on issues. And this will also help you formulate your own position and how you would express it when you actually participate in meetings. So, and finally, contact us and to contact each other as well and share experiences, challenges, and solutions. And last but not least, I want to especially thank all my colleagues on the executive board, especially Cynthia Stern, our chair, who all do their work on a volunteer basis to make sure that you are all kept informed of what is going on at the international level and organizing programs on numerous topics for your enlightenment. The next time we see each other will be at the celebration of the United Nations International Day of Older Persons on 3 October. And again, I reiterate, as others have, please do not forget to register. Information has already been sent to you, and you can also find information on our website with the registration information. So I wish you all good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and we thank you very much for attending this event and see you all on the 3rd of October. Goodbye. Thank you.